So today I am joined by Alexis and Paul from Sustainable Marketing Compass, and we're going to get out onto what that means and what potentially that means for you in a little while. But I want to get to the heart of who these people are. Who are Alexis and Paul? Because I've heard them described as marketers with horns. Now I need to find out what that means. Do one of you want to kind of describe why would you be called marketers with horns?
I'll let Paul go ahead with that.
Okay. I think the starting point would be that we're trying to remove our horns. But Alexis and I are both career marketeers and both passionate about sustainability at the same time. And we actually met on a business sustainability management course offered by the Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership. Phenomenal course, highly recommend it. When we joined, which is like 3+ years ago now, there wasn't that many marketers on the course. And the course is one where you're very much introduced to your cohort. You have to engage with, fellow students. So you kind of bound on in. It's like, hey, I'm Paul, I'm a marketeer. And it's like, ooh, but aren't you the problem? And it's like, oh, okay. And you kind of, I joined the course with that fear that marketing was more complicit in the sustainability challenges than I understood. I quite wasn't prepared for that kind of intake of breath and look of horror that a marketeer was on a sustainability course. And it was cowering in the corner with that kind of revelation where I met Alexis, who was pretty much having exactly the same experience. So I'll hand over to you now, Alexis. You can fill the story.
No, I don't know really where to go from there, but yes, that was basically the start of our entire journey that we went on. But it was, I think it was the shock of everyone, but also the shock of that course when we realised how complicit, marketing is with the climate crisis, the sustainability situation, everything around that, and actually, it was actually one of our, both of us actually were actually just debating leaving marketing altogether because we were just like, we just don't know where to go. Everyone thinks we're evil. Everyone thinks we're the problem. And, so far there are no solutions to where, out there that can really help us guide us to say, actually, this is a better way of doing things. And we spoke to a marketing professor, or not marketing professor, who definitely wasn't a marketing professor. We spoke to a professor from the course, and he said, we said that we're just thinking of leaving marketing. But where do we go from here? And he just turned around to us and he said, you can't leave marketing, but you just need to make sure that it becomes a force for good and work out how to do it, because there's not enough people out there who understand really how marketing can become a force for good and actually become aligned with the sustainability movement rather than complicit with it. And I suppose that's where it's really all started. And so that's been our mission ever since, is to gradually remove those horns and inspire other marketers to remove their horns as well.
So you opened the box, didn't you, on this thing? And yeah, it's almost like once you've seen what's inside, you can't ever not know it. It starts this feeling of guilt. I've heard a lot of marketers say similar in terms of, just being consumers and then really understanding what that word means, to consume, and then to kind of consume at a level which is obviously not sustainable in itself, and really actually be quite embarrassed by the fact that we've been facilitating that consumption over, well, for some of us, decades and decades. And it is quite an awkward moment, isn't it, really? And this phrase, being a force for good, obviously, sounds great, but I guess for a lot of us who have been really entrenched in marketing traditions, if you like, it's a real change of mindset, isn't it? It's not an easy transition, is it? Even though we know it's the right thing to do.
Absolutely. I mean, Alexis is quite right. The knee-jerk reaction is, I'm going to get out. When the light bulb goes on, as Gemma Butler says, it's kind of like you can't turn it off. And you do go through that kind of real dip of kind of like, oh my God, what have I been doing? What have I been contributing to? And figuring the way out is a bit of an emotional journey. And the course we went on really kind of equipped us with the tools to start interrogating just how bad marketing was. As you're saying, Neil, the overconsumption that marketing drives is absolutely horrible and absolutely, fundamental to some of the problems that marketing causes. We have reports like the advertised emissions report from the Purpose Disruptors, highlights that, 32% of the carbon footprint of every individual in the UK is a direct consequence of advertising. That commercial volume that's driven by advertising has that knock-on effect from a carbon footprint point of view. But what Alexis and I did was then start to interrogate everything else, through the true lens of sustainability, not just environmental carbon myopia, but the societal side of things as well as the environmental side of things. And as soon as you start lifting the lid, you find ever more increasing examples of things that make you shudder and wish you hadn't been in marketing.
But there's also a positive side. I think, I think it's a really exciting space for marketing right now, because I think people are starting to become aware of it. I don't think they know the depth of how complicit marketing is, and I think there's still a lot of more education that needs to be done there. But I do think that it's a really exciting space to be in if you start to educate yourself on that, because this is not going to be an era of incremental innovation. This is going to be like entirely rethinking 75 years of marketing. Every toolkit that's been out there since the 1950s, 60s, when marketing became less of a, what would we say, like a kind of just selling a few products, to actually much more something that was embedded within management science perspective. And when all these toolkits came out, like the 4 Ps, and that's really where it all started, because it became just this commercially focused drive consumption at all costs. And the dial is starting to change right now, and people are starting to realize that actually those toolkits are not fit for the sustainability world that we've got coming ahead of us. But with it, we don't have all the answers. And I think that's why it should be exciting. And other functions have really taken that challenge and really run with it and thought, gosh, this is one of the biggest challenges we're ever going to be faced in our era, in our generation. And let's see where we can take it. So I think trying to put the positive spin on is like, gosh, if you really want to be excited to be part of this movement, actually, there is just so much scope to cause dynamic change or create dynamic change in this.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, we've gone through the digital transformation, which was an exciting journey. I think the sustainable transformation of marketing could make digital look, like a walk in the park. It's more fundamental. It's more exciting. It's more purposeful. I think one of the things that our professor was saying is that, look, marketing can capture heart and minds. Marketing can change behavior. The one thing we need at this moment in time is behavioral change, just the right behavioral change. And that's where marketing needs to pivot, uses inherently valuable skills, but in a different way, to a different means and a different end. And that's, when we take, our students through our various courses and things, and we kind of plunge them into that trough of despair at the start, we then kind of bring them out to make them feel really empowered and really excited, and we've had some brilliant stories come out of, those training courses where, agencies have gone from not understanding anything about sustainability to being a B Corp within 9 months. So really using it as a way to not only start becoming a force for good, but, catalyze, empower what those teams were doing.
And also, actually, on top of that, they've come back, trying to solve some of the problems we have. And that's really exciting. Like, they literally well, no one else is doing it, so we're going to try it ourselves. And there's one particularly around, POS, who are literally making leaps and bounds in that space. And their clients are already starting to take notice, which is just really exciting.
I'm sensing more of an urgency from you guys in terms of not just the need, but the kind of the activity and the energy in this. Because I mean, I guess, like you, I've been looking at this, delving into this, experimenting with various bits and pieces within marketing in this topic for, well, quite some years now. And it's felt that I would use probably the word evolution rather than the word revolution. But by the way you're talking, it feels like there's this real kind of urgency now. It's almost that we've reached what you might term the tipping point, and now is that moment. It is the perfect storm. The technology's there, the models are there, the desire is there, the need from climate crisis, etc., is there. Is this now a revolution? I mean, I guess I'm talking to people who, if you've had two horns, you're kind of thinking, yeah, we're going to make this happen right now, and you're gritting your teeth and you're snarling at this thing, and I want to do it. But do you see with the work that you do that this is now, it is a revolution? It's really starting to happen.
Yeah, I think enormously. And I think one of the biggest drivers behind it actually isn't the marketing people at all. It's the sustainability leads. We talk to more sustainability leads than we do to marketing people at the moment. And it is because they are looking around trying to improve the company. It literally came off a call this morning about it. They're looking around. They've got their supply chain guys in order. They've got their ops guys in order. They've got their, HR starting to look at things. And what do we do with marketing? Like, they literally, it's the final one that they've never considered before, because it's always been considered, they're just the ones who will communicate the sustainability plans, but have never thought about, actually, does marketing itself need changing as well to align? And so I think that's probably where the sort of urgency is starting to kick in, is that these companies have, there's so many companies, even in the last couple of years, who've acquired these sustainability leads, heads of sustainability managers, whatever you want to call them. And they're delving into all these areas of the company. And I think suddenly, for the first time, marketing has been held accountable, which it never has done prior to that. It's always got away with it. So I think that's where the urgency is really starting to kick in, is actually from internal. And I think the bigger companies, because of these sustainability drives, are now starting to put pressure on suppliers, of which things like agencies come into it as well, which is probably driving the sort of agency movement as well at the moment. So I do think there is that. And I think the other thing is that it's starting to appear in quite a few places. Like, I say this very lightly because I dived into the guidelines the other day, but like the Cannes Lion Awards, which I know they made a massive hoo-ha, and I'm thrilled they're on the bandwagon. Don't get me wrong, I'm really thrilled they're on the bandwagon, but they made this massive hoo-ha about they've now embedded sustainability in their criteria. And actually, when you look into their criteria, it is a suggested criteria, but the award won't be judged on it. So and even then, what they're actually asking is quite light in comparison to where we need to take. But by the very nature of that headline going out, I think has really got people starting to think, because people love winning awards in this industry. And I think that started to go, oh gosh, we've got to start taking note of what that looks like. And I think there's just a lot more conversation that's starting to come out around what's actually possible. And I think that's what's really starting to drive that revolution is gosh, there are different ways of doing things, actually, if we think outside the box. And it doesn't necessarily cost you a lot of money. It can actually save you money sometimes as well, which obviously is often associated with sustainability. It's like, it's going to be a cost. It's actually, a lot of these things aren't.
Yeah, I mean, picking up on that and your point, Neil, about the urgent need for change, and Alexis's point about innovation. There's a great McKinsey article from a couple of years ago that talks about the tram rails or the tram lines that marketing's on. It's kind of like we all have websites, we all have social media presence, we all use data, and content glues it all together. Broadly, undermining the whole industry. But because, all marketers, all marketing teams, all agencies are working just within those confines, everybody's doing exactly the same thing. And it's like, within that, there's no genuine opportunity to be different and to differentiate. And when you take that state for where marketing is now, and you look at some of the challenges we have, from a sustainable marketing point of view, everything from kind of, decarbonizing your online footprint all the way through to kind of better managing your social brain print, it requires a completely new level of thinking, completely new innovative ways of approaching problems and approaching challenges. And marketeers are creative people. That should be something that we absolutely thrive on. So the opportunity to step off the tram rails and to do something that's entirely new, genuinely radically innovative, should be exciting for every marketer. That's why we say we think the new transformation's going to be bigger than the digital one. So, it should be taken as way out of our comfort zones, away from incremental innovation into true proper radical innovation.
I often hear the kind of the debate going on, and I guess I've been part of it too. The idea of this being, commercial advantage. If you can get this right, there is either a USP in there, or there's some kind of sort of competitive position that you can take if you can be either first in the marketplace or whatever. Is it more from your perspectives then? Is it more this is about differentiating than it is actual competitive advantage? It feels that there's more of a need for clarity here as to kind of, one, what you're going to focus on, but two, actually what's important for you as an organization. Is that a higher priority?
What's important for you as an organization within your societal and environmental world, I think, is where the priority needs to be. I mean, you tap into a core part of our thinking there, Neil. All the toolkits, all the focus on marketing is about growth. It's about, engineering growth. It's about commercial performance. What we're seeing in those other parts of the organization, what we're seeing in real thought-leading organizations like your Patagonias, like your Tony's Chocolonelys, are those where commercial performance isn't the be-all and end-all. We're looking at triple bottom lines, we're looking at circular models. The prioritization on commercial performance is balanced out by environmental and societal performance coming up as well into that mix. You've always still got commercial performance there, of course it is, but it isn't the be-all and end-all. And if companies and organizations are moving to that place, marketing needs to, and that means the role of marketing needs to change. So actually, it's beyond thoughts around differentiation for commercial need. Yes, you're still going to have to commercially perform, but actually in our model and what we set out through the sustainable marketing compass is this concept of redefining success. So, we do this exercise to help the organization and help marketing align with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We then bring that into what does that actually then look like for marketing? How does marketing drive commercial, environmental, and societal performance? And as soon as you start exploring that, you have a bit of a light bulb moment, because you realize that actually marketing can't just be an engine of growth, an engine of environmental performance, an engine of societal performance, and then for them all to operate independently. They're all interrelated. They're all systems linked. So you end up with this concept of stretching the balloon. It's kind of like, we pull too far on the commercial side of things, we're going to break the balloon over our environmental performance. So actually, marketing's new role has to become one of balance, almost that kind of regulatory valve that says, okay, we need to downplay the commercial side at the moment because we need to upweight on environmental performance or societal performance. And as soon as you get into that mindset, it really changes how you think about marketing. It really changes about what you do with marketing. We had a great exercise with one of the grocers, I won't name which one of the grocers, got a bit of a challenge with its refill station. So put a refill station in the store, and nobody's using it, everybody's running past. And so the conversation started as kind of like, how do we make more people use the refill store? Would you have to put it in a different place, improve the signage, change the colour, have somebody standing by the side of it with a mop and brush to kind of dust up the cereals once you've dropped them on the floor? And actually, that wasn't the problem at all. And when you approach the problem from this kind of like, environment, societal and commercial performance, you realize that what they've done is they've actually added this new range as an extra revenue line. So you got all the revenue line you'd got for their kind of convenience foods. You've got all the new revenue line for refills. At the same time, they'd introduced a revenue line for low-income families. So in those three kind of bits of revenue, you'd got a societal goal, a commercial goal, and you'd got an environmental goal. Yet actually, they were worried about the performance of the refill stations, where they're spending like 50p a year on marketing, and thinking actually it's just the design of the refill stations, and not actually thinking it's the several billions of advertising money I'm putting into the convenience foods that's really the problem. So what you get is a better remit for marketing out of that sort of thinking. And then once you start there, as you start thinking through what are the value we're offering, what are the products we're selling, what are the people we're talking to, more than what are the kind of segmented kind of target audience Venn diagrams we're going after, or however you articulate them at this point in time. The compass is designed to take you through a new journey, but it starts off at that point where you have a new role for marketing. And I think that's probably the biggest change that we're seeing with the shift from normal to sustainable marketing.
I think also, actually, just on top of that, actually, another really good example of that is Ruby's in the Rubble, that make loads of chutneys out of vegetable and fruit that were slightly wonky, didn't quite sell at the Covent Garden markets, and the founder was so appalled by like a third of all of this literally being chucked away, although it was completely decent. And so she started making chutneys and jams, and they're just delicious. Not that I don't work for them, I never have done, but they are really good. It's interesting, their marketing team, when I last spoke to them, I appreciate they might not be doing this now, but this was a couple of years ago, were actually targeted on revenue as a starting thing, but also actually the amount of food waste they'd saved through their sales. And when I asked their old head of marketing why they did that, they said because at the end of the day, the amount of food wasted that we'd saved, or the potential food that could have been wasted, that was the biggest driver for the marketing team, way beyond the commercial aspects, because that was where the purpose there was, like to get as much of that food out. So the commercial advantage naturally fell out of it, although that wasn't actually the main focus. And I think that's where marketing really needs to change, is start giving marketing teams that much bigger purpose around what commercial and societal targets are they really trying to achieve, and the commercial will naturally fall out of it, but just don't lead with the commercial advantage.
I'm finding this a really interesting dynamic, I guess, that you're setting up here, because with the compass, there's obviously identification of opportunities, be they, as you say, Alexis, purpose driven, or potentially these are something that might come at a commercial angle because somebody in the organization thinks, oh, hold on a minute, look, opportunity for project here that clearly is going to give us a commercial advantage. And I guess what we're saying is there's no kind of right or wrong, and it's okay to be commercial with caveats, because we've still got businesses to run here. So it's kind of, there's a boundary in which we're playing here. But to me, it's a really interesting one that I'd like to explore with you, is this idea of the necessary collaboration then with marketing and the rest of the organization. Because if there is this new person in role, and whatever their sustainability credentials or job title is, they clearly have a part to play, working literally hand in hand, side by side, and collaboratively with marketing, don't they? Because I think when I first started thinking about this from a marketing perspective, I thought marketing was going to conquer the world. I thought, oh, here's the big opportunity. This is where we can get a seat at the top table. We can really start to rock here. And it just simply hasn't happened. And I think what you're identifying, I already have identified, probably with the compass and with the evidence and the work you do, is that it's because you can't, as a marketer, do this in isolation. Am I kind of going in the right direction here?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the biggest things that they teach you on any sustainability course, especially around business sustainability management, is that sustainability is so different from any existing function out there, in the respect that nothing can be done without collaboration. It is the most open source piece ever. It's just like, you will not do it by yourself. They openly say it to you. They say you will not achieve your goals by yourself. You have to bring a lot of people with you on the journey, and collaborate with them to achieve certain goals. But I think the thing that we really discovered actually was that, and this didn't come immediately. We had another light bulb moment. One of the many light bulb moments we've had is that firstly, that a lot of people that come to us are generally, as I said previously, is the sustainability leads, not the marketing people. And as we started having more and more conversations, we realized that actually the sustainability people generally don't understand marketing. So what was happening there was also this crashing into each other because there wasn't even a commonality of language. So we actually realized that if you're going to work together, of which sustainability is going to be a crucial team that you're going to be working with if you are in marketing, is to come up with a common language that you both understand. And that might mean educating your marketing person on sustainability, but also educating your sustainability person on what marketing is. And actually, that's only then will you start to be able to see a much more like a sort of collaborative approach going forwards, because both parties understand the other's aspect. And I think the other big area in this is that marketing is quite far behind most other functions. A lot of other functions actually already understand many more concepts around sustainability. I'm not saying all of them understand everything, but understand many more because they've had this pressure put on them for a lot longer than marketing ever has. So by marketing people understanding sustainability, I think you'd naturally start to see collaborations across the businesses, go and talk to the supply chain people and understand really what's going on in the supply chain once you've got the tools to be able to do that. And I think, I just think it will become really powerful in that space.
Yeah, I building on what Alexis is saying there, Neil, I think, marketing also has to realize in that breath that just how far behind it is. Marketers love crashing into a meeting saying, we're going to do this, we're going to charge off over here. And it's like, if they do that, they'll be embarrassing themselves because, the sustainability leads in supply chain operations and manufacturing have got decades of experience, and marketing needs to learn. Back to your earlier point about pace, there's a huge need to get up to speed really quickly to catch up, with the rest of the big corporate machine on these things. And then exactly as Alexis is saying, is find that commonality of objective, those commonality of language. I'm absolutely confident that marketing can do this. We changed massively through digital transformation. I remember in the early days, I used to drive digital transformation at big corporates where you'd have the tech people and the marketing people in the same room, and your tech people are talking giga cheesy whatsits, and your creative people are talking about what shade we should put on things. And it's like, well, how on earth do you find a commonality in there? Yet, 10, 15 years on, it's how we live and breathe in marketing. We can go through those transformations. We've just got to realize just how big a transformation it is. And we also need to be fully prepared in that to kind of have some of our bedrock assumptions and bedrock perceptions really shaken. One of the things that we've looked into and talk about quite a bit is just the kind of the perceptual set that marketeers have around what is good and what success looks like. We're pretty much, or rather, we are the only department that can turn up at the board and without any sense of embarrassment say that we had a campaign that was 1% effective. Average response rates for programs, consumer campaigns and things of that nature very rarely get to 1% success. So if we actually got a campaign to, as an average, I'm talking here, if we got a campaign to 1% success, we'd turn up and go, yes, brilliant, amazing campaign. Imagine if you're in manufacturing. Imagine you're in automotive manufacturing and you turned up at the board and said, yeah, we made 100 cars this month and one of them worked. It's kind of like, ooh, you wouldn't be in that role very much longer. Yet marketing has got itself into a place where, 50 odd years ago, people were saying, 50% of what I spend on marketing is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which 50%. Inherently, that's an unsustainable place to start. With all the technology prowess we have at our fingertips now, we know what works and what doesn't. We have attribution models and things like that. And we've allowed that casual response to waste to allow us to get to a place where we're happy with 99% wastage rates. And that has a massive ripple effect through everything we do, through overproduction of content, through massive media campaigns that have huge digital carbon footprints. But we don't see it because we're very focused on that kind of like 1% that did work. You know, we have to take ourselves out of that mindset and put ourselves into another mindset. You know, we've done some work to benchmark the productivity of, say, the automotive industry over the last sort of 2 or 3 decades versus marketing. So if you look at an individual making a car 20 years ago or 30 years ago, they would roughly generate about £30,000 worth of income for a car manufacturer. Today, through improvements in supply chain and efficiencies and all those sorts of things, that individual can generate 130 grand's worth of income for that automotive car manufacturer. And that takes into account inflation and all those sorts of things. In comparison, if you look at direct mail, because it's the only thing you can really benchmark back that far in time, you know, 30 years ago, a piece of direct mail could get an open rate of 74%, which is staggering when you think about it today. Yet today, with digitization, personalization of content, all that technology we have at our fingertips, you know, you're lucky to get a 14% open rate on direct mail. So where the rest of industry has gone on this massive improvement curve, marketing has got gradually less and less effective, and yet we're perfectly happy with that. You know, and actually, we get to this place where if we don't get the performance we need, we just throw more volume at it. Let's get a bigger audience. Let's do another campaign. Let's keep it running longer. So it's more and more and more volume, and kind of like exposing my bad heavy metal tastes. It reminds me of a famous Deep Purple quote where the guitarist live on stage goes, "Can I have everything louder than everything else, please?" You know, that's where marketing's got to. It's kind of like, I need to cut through, so I just do more. I'll add more volume. I'll add more volume. And then everybody else is doing the same thing. And it comes back to that point about genuine innovation and taking your step out of the box. So actually, you know, you give yourself that new perceptual set and you say, well, I'm not going to start where I normally start. I'm going to start in a different place, but with a sustainable lens right at the heart of it.
So I get this right and really ask the questions that I'm sure are on the minds now of the people listening to this or watching this, is that because I've talked to quite a number of people now over sort of recent episodes about things like carbon literacy trust, sort of training and the like, which, you know, brings I guess a commonality of language, so we can start to talk probably, you know, in a more carbon literate way as a marketer, or, you know, we can really understand when we talk about carbon footprint or sustainability, we can kind of understand really actually what's going on and really just begin to explore some stuff that's really tangible, so begin to take accountability. Am I right in thinking then that with a sustainability representative, if we could call them that, within an organization, and if you're sat there as the marketer, something like the Sustainable Marketing Compass is that kind of central go-to model then that can be used collaboratively to be speaking the same language, exploring things together and kind of pushing the game forward? It feels that is kind of, yeah, it's the focus, isn't it? Isn't it the thing that's going to sort of sit amongst everybody and be that kind of central talking point?
It's not going to give you the answers, you know. To Alexis's earlier point, there's what we realized was that there's so many wonderful pockets of expertise and thinking going on around the industry that, you know, very focused in particular areas. You know, to provide all the answers would be a huge amount of work and it would change over the world. More, it points you in the right direction. So if you put it at the heart of your thinking, it gives you a framework to go and to reset your goals and your targets and redefine what success is. But then it points you in the direction of new ideas, new thinking for you to go and explore for yourself, like a compass should do. You know, the compass doesn't take you on the journey; it just says that way. And that's really its objective, is to say, kind of like, there's a world of great thinking out there. There's a world of thinking that you should be doing yourself. Here's a tool that helps point you in the right direction, and at the same time bring everybody to the same page. So yes, you know, we often get, you know, individuals say, just tell us the answer, just tell us what to do. And it's kind of, well, that's shortcutting all of what marketing is. Marketing is about having great brains and creative brains coming up with particular solutions for particular briefs and particular problems. There is no one answer to everything, so we wanted to pull together a framework that could help people navigate to those better answers.
I think on top of that, actually, what it does do, and I think sort of back to your point, Neil, is it does bring sustainable marketing into the same room, because the first task that you have to do is align marketing with the company's wider sustainability objectives. And so that is absolutely core. That's the first thing you have to do, is like, where is sustainability trying to get to within your organization? Probably where is the rest of your organization trying to go, and where does marketing need to help towards that? So what societal and environmental goals need to sit in marketing as that opening thing, so that at the end of the year, they can also show where they've made an impact against those targets, those wider company sustainability targets. I think on top of what Paul was saying, is it doesn't give you all the answers, but it does give you the questions that you need to be asking yourself within each section. So it will say, these are the things you need to consider when you are redefining what kind of value you want to create. This is what you should be thinking. These are some areas you can look at. These are some models you can look at. And these are the different types of things that you could possibly come up with. But it doesn't say this is exactly what you need to do, because I suppose it's much like the 4 Ps, although it's nothing related to the 4 Ps, and we've come so far away from that. But it's the same kind of thing. The 4 Ps doesn't tell you exactly how to price or what product you should be creating, but it tells you these are the parameters within which you should be thinking if you are starting to rethink your pricing strategy. And that's the same kind of concept that we've gone with the compass, is that we're not giving you the answer, but we're giving you the parameters within which to work with and to think about.
In a few years' time, because I mean, as I said earlier, for some of us, we've been on this journey for a while, so we kind of want to see some really good outcomes. And Paul, you said earlier, two or three examples which are, very, very well known examples of, I guess you could call it now best practice, even though we're still all trying to figure out the blueprint as we go, because nobody's been here before as a society, as a humanity. We've never kind of had this journey before, so we're all kind of trying to figure it out. If you had a crystal ball, or two crystal balls here, where are we going to be as marketing come, say, 2030? I mean, there's lots of, sort of UN goals, and lots of governments around the world talk about 2030 as being this kind of watershed, this tipping point, etc., etc. As marketing, rather than getting into any sort of political debate as to kind of how the world's going to look there, but what do you think from a marketing perspective we're going to look like? Do you think we will have achieved something? Do you think we will have actually made some? Because it's only 7 years away.
Do you know what? I'm going to be really optimistic on this
Good.
one.
I like that.
Partly because in the last year, the huge amount of change that's happened just in the last year gives me a lot of hope that actually it's picking up speed fairly fast. The big trade bodies are latching onto this now, and starting to publicize it, globally about what needs to, starting to even get the conversation. I'm not saying that, again, that they're at least getting sustainable marketing onto some of the agendas of where it needs to get to. I really hope that, seeing the speed at which it's operating right now, that we will get to a stage where marketing will firstly not operate just on commercial, that it will be actually operating across people, planet and profit. That will be my first aspiration, which I think will change everything entirely, just even if that was the only thing that changed. But I do hope that by then marketers will be fully educated in what sustainability is. Like, I think that's the biggest key, is getting everyone educated to start with, so that people can make much more informed choices and able to put the sustainability lens over every single decision made. As I said, I don't know what the solutions will be. I don't know what it will look like in terms of all of that, because I think that's where the big innovation is coming. But I do think just by starting with that redefined success, and actually all marketers being educated in sustainability, will drive just a monumental change in its own right.
I'm going to carry on with the positive vibe on that. Alexis and I assess on the new sustainable marketing course from Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership, and and just the caliber of the individuals going through that course, and the just brilliance of the ideas you see coming out once they have the light bulb going on, and how they can look at what they're doing and what their focus is, whether they're in an agency or within a team, is brilliant. But the best bit is the motivation they come out of that course with. It's kind of like they're re-equipped, they're re-empowered, and they're re-energized to go and make change. And I think if that gets the head of steam that Alexis and I are seeing, then, hopefully it's quicker than 7 years. Hopefully marketing, has really, really changed in that point of time. There's a great phrase about digital transformation, that digital became the water we all swim in. And I think, sustainability has got to get to that point. If in 7 years' time we're not having a sustainable conversation because it's what we do, then we've been successful. Remember the early days of digital transformation, you had the chief digital officer, that was the individual that had to change everything. There's less of them around now, because most organizations, it's just embedded in everything, and sustainability has got to go on that journey.
So you often then, I guess the logic says that if you're a marketer and you choose not to do it, you're not going to be a marketer. Is the bottom line really from what you're saying? Is that because 7 years, we know in the blink of an eye, it's going to be upon us. We're going to have gone through it. So I guess is what you're saying really is that, well, one, now is the time to begin. Two, Sustainable Marketing Compass will get that kind of initial first steps of curiosity fueled and directioned, and you kind of be pointed in the right direction. I mean, it is kind of, I guess I'm sort of paraphrasing here, but is your top tip for this in terms of making a start? Because I guess a lot of people listening to this will be thinking, okay, guys, I get it. I need to make a start. You've convinced me, but I don't really know where to begin. I mean, obviously, we'll put the links to the course and the compass in the description for this particular episode. But is it about just making a start and just getting some knowledge?
Knowledge, yeah. It's equip yourself with knowledge. Get yourself educated. If you don't know, go and meet your sustainability people. Listen to them, hear what they're trying to say. Get yourself equipped. Get the edge. There's some brilliant courses out there now. Get yourself equipped, make a start, get a relationship going with your sustainability teams, and look towards those pilot activities, those initial activities where you can pick something off. Are you going to decarbonize your website? Are you going to kind of set a new parameter for environmental performance? Find something to get yourself going. But get yourself educated, understand it. Everybody in marketing nowadays has to stay abreast of what's happening from a digital point of view. Is Twitter going to be around in the near future, sort of thing? We have to stay on the cusp of that news. You got to do that for sustainability. You've got to get into that mindset that I need to go up to speed and I need to stay on the pulse of what's changing.
I think also on top of that, once you've educated yourself, rather than trying to tackle everything at once, because it's going to be almost impossible, is find out what your company sustainability targets are. So have they got a carbon target? Have they got a circular economy target? Whatever it is, it could be anything, it could be zero plastic. And just apply that one lens over marketing, just as a starting thing. So everything that you do with carbon, as an example, if you chose carbon, it's probably one of the easiest ones to choose right now, just because there's so many tools out there. There's lots of carbon calculators for marketing. And just start, before you start actioning anything, just start measuring, finding out where you are, because I think this is the big learning from sustainability is there's no point in moving forward if you don't know where you're starting from, partly because it might also show you where you think your biggest impact could be your tiniest impact, and it could be actually sitting elsewhere. So actually, it just gives you the information to know where to action first. And I think by even just starting on one pillar will just start to get you into that mindset of thinking in a very different way. So educate yourselves and then find one pillar to work off and measure it. Do not action anything until you've measured it.
It's just such sage advice, I think, is the phrase, because it kind of probably does feel daunting to a lot of people, and again, particularly if they don't have a sustainability lead in the organization, because the whole organization and or sector is still very new to this, even though they probably shouldn't be, but they possibly are. So I think the lovely kind of advice and guidance that you're giving here is, it's okay to start small, it's okay to pick one thing, but you just got to get off the starting line. I think that's the key here, isn't it?
It is. It's absolutely. It's just find a way to have your own light bulb moment. I think that's the key thing for me. I think the one thing that we should touch on that potentially we haven't touched on enough is, we've talked about aligning with the rest of the business, where the sustainability goals of the rest of the business. I think one of the things that most concerned Alexis and I, and still keeps us very much worried at the moment, are some of marketing's own impacts, which you might not get when you align with the rest of your business. In particular around marketing's own societal impacts. So there's a great concept been born. It's kind of like, you have your carbon footprint, marketing has its brain print. This is the kind of messaging, the communications, that whole kind of creative manifestation you put out there into society through your activities. And it's not necessarily something your sustainability lead's going to come at you with from within your organization. It's something marketing got to get more aware of itself. It's on how collectively we impact society. Your average individual sees between 2 to kind of 10,000 pieces of media a day, which are increasingly personalized, targeted exactly at you at that moment to get you to do something, to buy something. And typically what they do is destabilize you. Your hair's too grey, or you're not fit enough, or something like that. And here's my thing that will make your hair shinier or make you fitter. That collective brain print is like 2 to 10,000 times a day saying, you're not good enough. You could be better. There's a well-being and mental health impact of that. And the concept of brain print, I think, is something that's beginning to be more understood, but it's inherently within marketing. And I think that's something that marketing has really got to move the dial on. Because we impact society, we help shape society. There was in the 80s and kind of early 90s, marketing created the yuppie. And when we look back on time in that era, we think about the yuppie, we think about a concept, a construct that marketing created. We shaped that way we articulate the 80s and 90s is shaped by the way that marketing viewed it. We have that impact on culture and society. And at the moment, brain prints are full of bias and things of that, which are, very damaging for society and very damaging for the individuals. And that's something we've got to get a lot better at.
Yeah, and it's not only brain print. I mean, it's actually in so many different areas that, the conscious advertising network. Yes. Again, sustainability leads probably wouldn't know this, but the amount of advertising spend that funds misinformation, funds pornography, funds child abuse websites, just because there's a lack of governance in place, not in space. There might be a lack of governance in space as well, but in place. I think, it's really important what Paul was saying. It needs to have its own impacts measured as well. And hopefully, actually through the Sustainable Marketing Compass, just as one of the many areas, is helping you actually identify that. And one of the biggest ways to do it is actually to map your impacts against the UN SDG framework, rather than doing it against traditional models, is actually say, what we're doing in marketing, where is it actually affecting, the goals as they stand? And, is our marketing driving equality? Is our marketing preventing gender equality from actually happening, because 2/3 of our adverts show, males in them rather than, 50-50 with females? And some of the reports that are coming out around advertising at Cannes Lion, all the Cannes Lion entries are just appalling in terms of gender equality, which again, you're sustainability lead might not consider when they're thinking about your impacts, but are really important that marketing people are very aware of themselves.
And it's beyond the creative. I mean, data, marketing's use of data can, be really criticised in many respects, whether it's poor use of AI or things of that nature. But there was a great bit of research done by Harvard into the inequality injected by dynamic and personalised pricing. So various industries use this kind of dynamic pricing based on the bias signals that you actually demonstrate. The idea being that we can give you the best price to get the sale. And what this study found was that actually those dynamic pricing algorithms basically gave the lowest price to the most affluent individual. And it's kind of like, it's that amplification of bias in society because we're not thinking at that level of contextual care in the way that we operate our marketing. And some of the things that we do in the Compass, and some of the things that the Conscious Advertising Agency, Conscious Advertising Network does as well, is look outside of marketing. So, we looked at the healthcare industry, which around a patient has this concept of contextual care. So if you go to your GP, they don't just fix your poorly wrist or broken arm or whatever it actually is. They look at your age, or they look at your societal status, they look at your family situation. You look at everything around that individual to figure out what's the best way to deliver care for them. Marketers need to start thinking that way around the individuals they're communicating with. And I think that starts by stopping treating them as consumers or numbers and actually recognizing them as citizens and as real people. But, that kind of societal side of what marketing does, marketing has its very own discrete impacts that it's got to get addressed, got to get aware of. And that should put a lot of things forward. And that should almost be something that the marketing team is expressing to the organisation sustainability leaders. This is something that we probably need to figure out.
Fundamentally, time for marketers to wake up. It's time to get off the hamster wheel. It's time to kind of stop being complacent, stop thinking your job is just social media, and wake up. Because I've been using this hashtag mindful marketing now for about a couple of years, and just about being mindful is just being in the present moment and actually looking around you, stopping and thinking, hold on a minute, why have I been doing it like this for all these years? Or why do we just keep repeating the same thing without stopping and looking at all of these things? And I guess fundamentally that's where the Compass kind of comes in, because it is a wake-up call that there are so many multifaceted elements of impact you potentially have as a marketer. You have to be aware and awake and present to figure those things out. Don't just keep doing what you've always done, I guess is what we're saying, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think there's also an acknowledgement that needs to go on in marketing that we've always been a bit of the bad boy. Been doing a bit of personal interest research recently, around kind of some of the early, where the environmental movement came from, and the Silent Spring, the book that was written by Rachel Carlson back in kind of like 1950s, which was the first environmental book. And this was a scientist. Actually, interestingly, she was originally a brochure writer for the American fishers industry, so arguably she was a marketeer. But a scientist that was looking at the use of DDT in American agriculture post-war, and realised just how the spraying of crops, whilst driving huge productivity for grain production and milk yield and things, was actually not only killing the bugs on the plants, but was leaching into the water, killing the fish, killing the birds, eating the fish, and then actually, impacting humans. She was the first to really publicise that whole causality of human impacts on nature. Marketing's response to that, 70 years ago, was probably the first bit of greenwashing, where actually, the whole of the industry poured money into a PR campaign to discredit her science. She starts the book off with a fable about Silent Spring, a fable about a village where there's no dawn chorus from the birds because all the birds have been killed by the leaching of the chemicals into their food system. And a chemical company at the time wrote a whole counter argument to that fable, which actually painted nature as evil. You know, the fact that, you know, this insect could get into your grapefruit, you know, was actually vindictive and nasty by that insect. It wasn't the insect just doing what it does, because that's nature. So actually, you know, right way back, the very first book around sustainability, marketing's response to it was actually greenwashing and negative. And there's almost a bit of kind of, it's back to the horns again in a way. It's acknowledging that we've not been in the right camp right from day one, and now's the time to get in the right camp.
Marketers with horns. I knew this conversation was going to be interesting and exciting. And yeah, thank you so much for both of you for your time sort of in this session. It's been absolutely fascinating. I think if anybody listening to this is a marketer and thinks at this point, nah, it's not for me, I'd like to meet them, because I just think that would be an almost impossible situation now. You have sold the credentials for marketing sustainability, yeah, to the nth degree here. I think this has been so valuable, and I think it gives people a really great starting point. If they're already on the journey, it'll give them maybe a refocus with the compass. And as I said earlier, I will put all the contact details in the description here. It's been really fascinating. Lovely to hear from both of you, your kind of views and the news on the status of, you know, sustainability in marketing and how we can actually make this happen together. And I feel like I kind of sense that an episode 2, with the number of topics that we could do further deep dives into, that an episode 2 might not be such a bad idea. What do you think of that? I'll put you both on the spot.
Sounds brilliant. And anything to carry on. Yeah, anything to carry on debating this or talking about it and just widening the knowledge on it. It's so interesting. We're only at the start of all of this, and there's just so much information being surfaced all the time that needs to be exposed, that I think it's really, yeah, lots to be said.
Very much up for that. Thanks, Neil. Very much up for a V2.
We will do that. We will definitely do that. So Alexis and Paul from the Sustainable Marketing Compass, thank you both very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.